Good morning to everybody. It's about 8 o'clock here on the West Coast, so we're going to get started here in just a moment. Hopefully everybody has filed in that's going to attend today. Um, I am Robert Freeman, your wonderful host for the day, so let's go ahead and get started. I am once again coming to you today from beautiful Portland, Oregon, and I guess it's going to be about a sunny 80 degrees here today. Really just an amazing day to be in the Northwest. It's really just beautiful country out here. If you were here with me about 2 weeks ago, you might recall that I mentioned I'm from the Midwest normally, Chicago to be exact. According to family sources out there, it's been a pretty hot summer so far. I guess today is going to be no exception, about 90 out there today. Down in Texas, we got, with where some of our folks are at, we've got about the mid 90s and some rain, just like up here in Oregon. It's going to be a little bit drizzly today, but all in all, just beautiful, beautiful weather out here. I've always heard, weather being what it is, of course, that if you want to retire and live somewhere where the weather's not going to be the great, kind of maybe want to go down to the southeast and, of course, not to offend anybody down in the wonderful southeast, but if you want to retire and really come up to the heavenish area, you want to come up here to the Northwest. Of course, based on personal and public opinion, but I happen to believe, at least at my present time, I really would want to live nowhere else than here in Oregon and the Pacific Northwest. It is just a wonderful, beautiful part of the country. As today's opening motivation quote for the day is, it shows a huge, huge, beautiful picture of Haystack Rock out here at Cannon Beach on the Oregon coast. For any of you 80s fans, this is the wonderful big rock that's in the back center of the picture here from the motion picture Goonies, when they were lining up their little doubloons and their map guidance devices. It's our little famous rock area out there. It's more or less the beach's claim to fame, except of course a wonderful big incident where they exploded a beached dead whale. It had washed up ashore and was just kind of stinking and sitting up there for a long time, so they took some dynamite and literally blew it to smithereens. But, that's just Oregon being what it is. Oregon's always done things a little differently than other places, as it is, I suppose. So with that said, today's quote, as far as today's motivation, it's certainly something that I find particularly fitting with these Monday motivation seminars, and that people often do say that motivation doesn't last. Well, of course, neither does bathing, which is why we recommend it daily. Hopefully these daily motivations that we do each Monday are something to inspire and motivate you to start your week off right, and get things going to a point where you really just want to get a really good start on the week, and try and make that week that was just previous week just disappear, start fresh for the week, and just kind of let it all go and just start fresh for the week. So happy Motivation Monday, everybody. For those of you that are new, this slide here that you're looking at going up here next is going to show our common overview of format that we follow each Monday. We kind of start off with a brief review of last week's tip of the week, and then move on to this week's new tip, be it a retention idea, maybe some important dates, or possibly some current events, or any changes resulting in the market today. We then move on to some of the AHCP sales trends, and we'll take a look at the sales leaders for the week. And we're going to end with a sales technique that we really hope that you're going to take advantage of and implement not only in your daily sales goals, but utilize for the future as another sales tool to save in what I like to call the old memory warehouse. The technique that we're going to be covering today, just real quick, is going to be part 2 of a series that I've put together, which is going to be understanding and knowing your client. And more specifically today, with Medicare's AEP coming up right around the corner, it's going to really be how to converse specifically with our over 65 crowd. Now, if you're somewhat of a regular to these sessions, you'll again probably notice that your normal host, Mr. Super Awesome Dan Giancola, is not here with us today. Dan will still continue to present these on some Mondays, but him and I are going to swap back and forth. And as I mentioned a couple of weeks back, I'm going to step in to kind of take the workload off and give you guys kind of a different voice every once in a while to kind of really help inspire a positive message that not only can be utilized to enhance your overall sales numbers, but hopefully that each tip can really be used to better your personal self in the field of things under like effective communication or just learning about Medicare in general. It's something really just to add into your overall skill sets. Each message for sure will have an overarching lesson, that you can be applied for the weeks to come, but really also I really hope to be applied into your daily lives. So with all that said, I'm gonna quickly run through a recap of last week's tip of the week and then kind of move on to this week's tip of the week. So last week, Dan really kind of spoke about the 7 total AME insurance options under accident medical expense. He wanted to let you guys know also that the General Agent Center works with Value Benefits of America, VBA, and the National Employers Association. It really helps to provide great benefits and fully insured products, really through most of the major insurance companies that they might otherwise not be able to purchase at such low group rates. You can actually go through gacquote.com for that. Something that was down here is that he wanted to make note of that no child only in these states, and that the eligibility age is now up to age 70. NGAH and NGIC.com are soon to be updated with the correct information on this. Moving on today's tip of the week, we've got something that is very, very exciting. With accident season upon us, we really want to show that you can really make some extra cash while protecting your clients from their mishaps, let's say. So National General is going to try and put some additional cash in your pocket every time you sell one of the accident plans to a customer. So for the qualifying NatGen accident plans sold to new customers between, it looks like June 1st of 2018 and October 31st of 2018, NatGen's going to give you a monthly bonus in cash. Everybody likes to earn a little bit extra bonus money and extra cash. Any of the National General's accident plans are going to qualify for the bonus. The Plan Enhancer AME, the Accident Fixed Benefit, the Plan Enhancer, or TrioMed multi-coverage options, for example. So the way that this works is that if you have 40 or more policies sold in the month at $20 per app is what you're going to get for that. Anything from 25 to 39 policies that are sold, you're going to get 15 per app. 11 to 24, 10, and then anything under 10 is going to be 5. So if you're not appointed with National General yet, just you can get contracted and contact us. You can definitely get a hold of us at 877-228-8773. Again, that's 877-228-8773 for any contracting needs in that aspect. Or you can reach out to me, robert.freeman@velopoint.com, and I can definitely send you some information on this if you want some further clarification, or if you want some more information on the bonus plan structuring itself. So on to this week's trends. I really, really love the weeks when it's wonderful that there's a blank screen here. Here we go. Once I get into some technical difficulties, I really love the weeks when it's all green. Those are really fun weeks for me. Not necessarily saying that no change or maybe decreases are a bad thing necessarily, but they're always fun weeks for me when I get to read that everything has been increased. So we've got an increase in our short-term medical that's leading the way under NatGen this week, with our fixed benefit as an increase also, with VBA still leading from last week. Under our supplements area, we have had an increase in accident sales with NatGen, taking the lead on that. No change really under the critical illness, with Colorado Bankers Life still holding out with the top there, but not really necessarily a bad thing, but just no change from last week in that. And an increase in dental, with Golden Rule leading the way on that. So excellent, excellent numbers here. Excellent stuff. We're really getting into the heart of the season here with the selling. And again, I really like to see the weeks go by and just to be able to see increase, increase, increase. That's really motivating stuff for me to know that you guys are really stepping it up and pushing it as the weeks go by. So excellent work to everybody. So moving on to our sales shout outs. This is some really good stuff here. We've had some changes over the last couple of weeks, but we've actually been able to see some adjustments in our first and second place and third place, with Jacob taking the lead here with gold in first for the limited benefit. Katya still holding strong in second. It was really close this week, but she's still holding out in second there. And Robert taking bronze. I wanted to give a really good, great job work to all three of you individuals. You guys are doing great work on this. Um, and it's been really, really close as the weeks have gone by, and it's been fun to kind of watch the numbers adjust just slightly, and everybody kind of take a place from first and second, doing a lot of swapping back and forth. It's really inspiring to see this stuff. So as far as our STM is concerned, we have Dustin in first place this week, Katya in second, and Cody Randazzo in third. I believe from last week, Cody is new this week. So great job, Cody. And Katya is still hanging strong in there, just a little bit of an adjustment with Dustin taking over the top spot, but great work to you guys. So with those sales shout outs by, I really kind of want to move into this week's sales technique. A couple weeks back, I started a series under knowing and understanding your audience and really learning good communication techniques and marketing strategies to get to know your specific audience, how to communicate with them. And in that first part, I did an opening part in which, out of what I have planned, at least in my personal agenda, which things can change from time to time, I really have planned a total of a 4-part series here. And out of the 4-part series, what I'm really trying to look at here, with the general one being 2 weeks back, is more or less a general overview and some really easy adjustments that you can make now to really kind of just adjust your techniques to know and understand your overall audience. Um, the opening of the series focused on the overreaching goal, which was, again, knowing the audience and understanding them. Subsequently, how to adjust that sales pitch to accommodate the specific market demographic that you're speaking with, either on an individual basis or in a group setting. Most of this, of course, is somewhat common sense, but you'd really be surprised that when the tactics are not actively practiced, you can fall out of practice, and then they might well leave you floundering during a sales pitch, or lose your audience or an individual's attention. And then, of course, the loss of the sale quite possibly follows. What my goal is here, as far as the series, going into today's topic, which is part 2 of effective communication with the over 65 demographic, and then moving into part 4, or rather part 3 with the under 65, and then part 4 with the going over some specific demographic research techniques and marketing strategies. I really feel that once this series is done, you're really going to have a really good skill set and a really good knowledge base to fully understand your demographic, your audience. And with me specifically, in the fact that I do a lot of Medicare sales and a lot of Medicare training, it's really going to be like a core that I'm going to be hammering in over the next few weeks to really understand this demographic group and get to know that audience that you're speaking with, and really kind of hopefully leave you with some skill sets that will make your overall pitch, your overall empathy, and your overall communication with that group just a lot stronger as the days and weeks move on. So last week, just a real quick recap that we had here. We went over identifying your target audience, researching specific trends, learning and really understanding your target audience. We discussed selling with emotions versus selling with facts, when to specifically use those 2 different techniques, depending upon your target audience, and getting into today with a quick jump forward with that. With the over 65 demographic, it can really vary. A lot of the times with this audience, it's really going to be emotion based, and you're really going to be kind of selling a story. But at the same time, with this group, they really also do enjoy their facts. Now, obviously, going into week 3, when we're going to be talking about the under 65 demographic with the younger audience and the millennial audience, they really kind of have a completely different purchasing style, where it's more on demand. We want this now, we want this information now, compared to the over 65 demographic, where you're really kind of selling a story and selling an emotion and a feeling. Um, as I mentioned, you really want to make a connection with this crowd, and just knowing and understanding the audience in general and making a connection is something that's really going to deeply impact the overall sale anyhow. So today's part 2 is the effective communication sales techniques for the over 65 demographic. What we're going to really kind of focus on here are a couple main topics. And out of those main topics, a few of the top things that you really want to understand with looking at this demographic and looking at this audience is you really want to exercise patience and compassion. we live in a society where the post World War II baby boomer generation, which if you're not really aware, it's generally between the mid 1940s and the mid 1960s. They're really reaching their senior years in record numbers, and they're representing on even as a daily basis an increasingly larger and larger segment of the population. As we're well aware, higher standards of living now and medical advancements are really extending everybody's life expectancies in many, many countries, as with the United States as one of the leaders in this area, to well above the age of 80, 90, and pushing into the hundreds now. Really caring for and having successful relationships with this older generation, it really requires unique communication skills and really specific strategies when it comes down to it. So what we'll do is we're going to go over some tips in regards to speaking with this generation and really kind of going over what you really want to try and focus on. The idea is really kind of also presume that the relationship with the seniors is relatively positive and that they're cooperative, of course. So keep that in mind when we go through these tips. You really mainly do want to exercise patience and compassion. It goes without saying that patience and compassion they're really needed when dealing with the elderly or the over 65 demographic. They may have physical challenges, they may have movement challenges, there could be memory issues with forgetfulness, there's needs, and sometimes even just apathy or just some of the behaviors that you're really going to encounter. It's really easy to lose patience and become frustrated sometimes when speaking with them. I mean, you might find yourself repeating things multiple times. I've even heard people that once they got into the Medicare field, they were tempted to just give up and walk away. But during these moments where you're feeling that doubt or you're just really kind of questioning what's happening, it's really helpful to put yourself in their shoes. Even just for a moment. You really want to consider the adult that you're dealing with and kind of think in your head this sentence: it must not be easy, or it must be hard. So for example, she's being so apathetic. It must not be easy to live without friends around, or he does everything so slowly. But then again, it must be hard to deal with arthritis every day. Really having empathy for this older adult population is an effective way to generate the patience and the compassion that you need to exercise when you're communicating with them. If despite your best efforts, your client and your patient still runs thin, just take a time out, take a step back, and then come back when you're in a calmer state of mind, because really what you're going to see as this goes on is that it's really about patience in the end and just taking it slow. One of the other things that this generation and this demographic really relies heavily on is respect. And what I mean about that is that you really want to be asking instead of telling or ordering them to do something. Um, as I mentioned, one of the core needs with many of the seniors is to really feel relevant and respected. I know that when I speak with members in my family, respect it's a very large thing in my family. It's something that I've been, you know, um, kind of programmed to really in a way. And a lot of the times with the way that things are going within the population and the way that society moves so fast these days, relevance and respect really kind of just falls by the wayside. But you can really help validate these needs by really frequently asking instead of ordering, when you're communicating with an older adult. For example, just if you're out to lunch with an older adult in your family, you're having soup for lunch today. So instead of that, maybe say, would you like to have some soup for lunch? Or we're having some soup today, do you think that would be okay? Better yet, you really want to offer options. Would you like to have soup or salad? Would you like to maybe look at this and order further? Asking questions really offers them a greater sense of respect and regard in the end. Offering options rather than telling or ordering them gives that person, either him or her, really a greater sense of control of the immediate environment and really about what the outcome is, so that kind of makes them feel like you are respecting them in general. Some of the main points in here that is some really quick overviews, some general kind of high-level topics. As you're aware, as the baby boomers increase in age, the population is just really dramatically changing. I think that what I mentioned or what I had found here when I was going through some of my research is that by the year 2030, that's 2030, a projected 71 million Americans are going to be age 65 or older, an increase of more than 200% from the year 2000, which according to the US Census Bureau. It's estimated that some 6,000 people turn age 65 every day, and by 2017, 2018, this year, of course, 10,000 people will turn 65 every day. That's 10,000 people aging into the Medicare and eligible for AEP this year. Those numbers are just insane when you think about it. Really this market is going to increase the demand for physician services, pharmacy services. In the United States, people over the age of 65 visit their doctor an average of, I think that I read something along 8 times per year, compared to the general population or the millennial population of anywhere from 3 to 5 visits per year. You really want to prepare for an increasing number of older demographics and really learn and develop these skills now to get a good understanding of how the population is and how to really interact and communicate with them. The communication process in general, whether it be over 65 or under 65, it's complex, and it can be further complicated by age. One of the biggest problems that we can face when dealing with someone that's an older patient is that they're actually, they're more heterogeneous than younger people. Their wider range of life experiences and cultural backgrounds really often influence their overall perception of illness, their willingness to adhere to specific medical regimens, and an overall ability to communicate effectively with you as a sales agent, or even when it comes into speaking with their healthcare provider. Communication in general can be hindered by just the normal aging process. And you have to keep these in mind that, that can involve sensory loss, a decline in memory. They have a slower processing of their information, which is a lessening of power and influence over their own lives in general. They could be retiring from work, their separation from friends and family. Really at a time when older patients they really have the greatest need to communicate. Life and physiological changes in general really can make that super difficult for them. Unclear communication can really cause the whole encounter and this whole sales process to fall apart. You really want to pay careful attention to this aspect when you're speaking with them and really put these points into practice. So if you walk into a room and you're starting a sales pitch with the older 75, or rather the older 65 demographic, you're going to want to take some really key things into consideration. One of those being allowing extra time. Studies have shown that older patients, they tend to receive less information than younger patients do, when in fact they really want more information. Because of their increased need for this information and their likelihood to communicate what their needs are to you as being poor, they're going to be nervous about discussing this with you. And what that's going to mean is that it's going to need extra time. You're going to want to plan for it. You definitely don't want to appear rushed or uninterested when you're speaking with them. Your clients will sense it, and they'll end up shutting down, making the effective communication process, in essence, nearly impossible. Something else to keep in mind is that you want to avoid distractions. Your clients are going to want to feel that you have really spent some quality time with them, and that they're, like I mentioned before, that they're important. Researchers really recommend that if you give your client your undivided attention in the first 60 to 90 seconds that you're speaking with them, you can create the impression that a meaningful amount of time was spent. I know that that doesn't seem like very long, but just that initial couple minutes with them of your undivided attention can really mean the difference of finishing on a positive note or finishing on a negative note. Of course, you should always aim to give your patients full attention during the entire time that you're speaking with them and to the entire sale. But when possible, you really want to reduce the amount of any sort of distractions that are around. such as other people, large rooms, maybe any sort of background noise. And what that really can kind of mean is really sitting face to face with them when you're doing that initial pitch or you're discussing or meeting with them for the first or second time. Older clients, they can also have vision and hearing loss. You have to keep that in mind. Reading your lips can actually be crucial for them to receive certain information if you're speaking with them face to face, or if obviously if you're over the phone and you're speaking with them, you're going to want to make sure that you're going to be talking slowly, talking clearly, enunciating your specific words, and then just really making a distinctive effort to listen to them. As I mentioned, speaking slowly, clearly, loudly. If you are face to face, of course, maintaining eye contact. These are all really critical and crucial things to ensuring that the entire conversation moves forward. So, in general, when dealing with the over 65 crowd, you want to use short, simple words and sentences. Uh, Simplifying your information and speaking in a manner that can be easily understood, it's one of the best ways to ensure that your client's going to follow what you're saying, what you're suggesting. You definitely do not want to use a lot of medical jargon or technical terms that are difficult for even just the layperson to understand. In addition, you really don't want to just assume that they're going to understand sometimes even basic medical terminology or medical plan information. Make sure that you use words that are familiar and comfortable. So my main rule of thumb is that if I'm trying to explain something to somebody, I have a 10-year-old son, and that has really taught me overall patience in general. But it really just kind of puts everything in perspective of when I'm speaking with him, and I consider him to be sometimes even brighter than me. He stumps me on history in areas that it just baffles my mind. But when I'm speaking with him, I can really relate to the 65 generation because I really want to use those specific sentences, those simple words and sentences so that he's going to understand. And in the end, the entire process is going to be understood so that the sale can move forward. You want to really also ensure that you stick to one topic at a time. Information overload is something that can not only confuse people that are 65 or over, but it confuses me. It can confuse anybody under 65 for sure. You want to avoid this 100%. Instead of providing a long, detailed explanation, try sending them out information in an outline form. It really kind of allows you to explain the important information in a series of steps or in a series of a plan in the way that the plan breaks down. You can talk about certain things in completely in outline format. Sometimes what might even be needed is that you might need to write down the instructions if you are face to face. Now, if you're going to be speaking with someone over the phone, it could be something as easily as sending them an email or referring them to a specific guide or a specific reference. But when giving instructions, you really want to avoid making them overly complicated or confusing. In this manner, of course, using the writing information, you kind of just want to make sure that you write down the instructions in a real basic, easy to follow format. Writing, of course, it's really a more permanent form of communication than speaking, and provides the opportunity for them to even later review what you've said in a less stressful environment. You want to try and utilize charts and models and pictures. Visual aids will really help people better understand what actually the process is. When those guides are set out, when those FAQs are sent out, and those quick reference guides, make use of them. If they need to have something sent to them, definitely send them something. Something else to keep in mind, and that this is something that I've actually had to teach myself a lot, is that you really want to learn to summarize things quite often, and that being the most important points. As you discuss the most important points of a specific plan or a specific benefit section, you really want to make sure that, do you need to ask them to repeat this? If after hearing what they have to say, you conclude that she didn't really understand or he didn't understand the instructions, simply repeating them might work, since repetition leads to greater recall. Um, so, but be aware that if a patient requires a second or a third repeat, or if you're speaking with someone in a sales manner and they ask it to overly repeat, that they actually might become frustrated themselves, and they could end up disregarding the plan information that you're sending them altogether. And an effective technique to really try at this point is to rephrase the message, making it shorter and simpler. You may also sometimes, if it's necessary, if you're going to be face to face, or if there's someone else that's going to be making a decision for them, you might want to even bring a family member or a friend along during that consultation to ensure that the information is really understood and to taken to heart. And the main thing to summarize this area is you want to give them the opportunity to ask questions and express their concerns. Once you've explained the plan, once you've gone through anything that they've necessarily brought up to you and you've provided all that necessary information, you want to give them ample opportunity to ask the questions that they have. Uh, this will really allow them to express apprehensions, and through their questions, of course, with fact finding, you're going to be able to better drill down and determine whether they completely understand what you've provided to them and the instructions you've given. And if you have doubts, you may want to follow up with them, in a day or two or in a week, just to make sure that they actually fully understand what's happening with the plan details that you're trying to get across to them. So getting into some specific, more selling tips here. What you're going to want to really kind of focus on, especially when it comes to things that I discussed before being some high-level overview points, drilling down to some more specific areas here. You really want to differentiate yourself online. Digital marketing, you might think that digital marketing is the most effective way when targeting specific generations. But a lot of research study now shows that 59 to 65% of seniors today are increasingly internet savvy. So that's more than half of the market and a 6% upturn compared to last year. So in addition to things like regular posts on your LinkedIn or your Facebook pages, you really want to make sure that you have clear and engaging, and if you have a personal landing page or a website, that you have clear and engaging information for the prospects that are actually walking up to you or that you're referring them to. A lot of seniors that are doing their own research online is increasing. So the fact that they're doing their own research on the internet more and more today than ever before is a really, really good point to consider when you're wanting to differentiate yourself. You really also want to be an educator. By providing education to the over 65 crowd, a lot of people tend to establish themselves as experts. And by doing that, you really earn credibility and trust. A lot of that, the seniors are really adamant about education. They do believe that the first role of somebody that they're speaking with or that they're getting information from them, it comes to be from them to the role of an advisor. They want to feel educated, and of course they want to feel respected at the same time. And again, as I mentioned before, you always want to make sure that you're going to be patient and not pushy. You do want to communicate with them often. A lot of times people can get impatient when they're speaking with this specific demographic, and it's the first thing that's going to kill the sale. If you really take the time and listen to them, you really are not going to have to sell to them. They are going to sell themselves. Um, One of the quotes that I found online is that it was that if somebody was speaking with some seniors and she offered them a form that some of their prospects could fill out, but only if they were interested. And the form indicated that, I make a promise really to not bother you, and nobody's going to be calling you and saying, you came to my sales seminar, you need to come to my office, or we need to follow up. This person has never really done that. What they want to do is they want to make sure that making decisions becomes more difficult, and that the seniors are going to understand this, especially if they're over the age of 80. They're really going to feel like they want to keep things the same, no matter how good or how bad it is, or whether there's, consequence or risk involved. It's really hard for them to make that distinction. You're going to want to make sure that making your business senior friendly, your overall presentation style should be tailored to the specific crowd, of course, that you're working with. Speaking in large volume, making sure that you enunciate many of the things that I mentioned before, but making sure that you specifically drill down into those senior friendly areas of the business. And of course, as I mentioned before, you're going to want to make sure that you give them your full undivided attention. You want to tailor your marketing materials. And again, you definitely want to consider hearing loss, and don't ever automatically assume an easy sale. You know, you might see that you yourself, that there's a clear need for this customer to buy this specific medical insurance, for example. But to many people, thinking about certain things like medical insurance or even like life insurance, for example, it's really scary. You know, planning for it and making that purchase can be just as frightening as even just thinking about it. And it's really not uncommon for people to believe that details will work themselves out without a lot of advanced planning, but just really be prepared to talk frankly with the older generation about their needs. Be aware that even though they might need the specific product, they might not have even given it any thought. The number of seniors who need these specific products and these medical insurance plans, it's growing. And the need for knowledgeable agents who can really help them make good purchase decision, it's really never been greater than it is now. Taking into account all the limitations, you know, like I mentioned, such as hearing loss, breaking down the product information clearly, and educating yourself about the needs of the market in general, you're really going to be able to provide those customers with the excellent service that they deserve. Some factotums here before we wrap up for the day, a few more slides to go, but 71% of older adults than age 60 has had difficulty using print materials, just to keep that in mind. 80% have difficulty using documents such as formats or charts. 68% had difficulty with interpreting numbers and doing calculations. We can really improve how we communicate with the older generation by creating materials and messages which match their health literacy skills. Really making sure that you tailoring those materials, whether it be in person or over the phone or where you're directing them to, tailoring them to the specific market and to their need is really going to make the difference in the end. One of the main things to ensure that as you're going through the entire process here and you're speaking with this crowd, my aim here was to more or less introduce and reinforce overall communication skills, really kind of essential in working with the older generation and even their family members if they happen to be there. You know, you really want to avoid stereotypes. You really want to remember that the older clientele, they're very diverse and unique. The older generation deeply value their health. Sometimes an agent may typically focus primarily on determining needs and selling a plan based on those needs. Older people generally care most about maintaining the quality of their lives. They aren't necessarily preoccupied with illness or a specific disease or, more importantly, death in general, but in fact, many of the older generation are relatively accepting of the prospects of death and seek chiefly to make the most of the remaining years. Um, you really want to make sure that you let them know that you welcome their questions and you are an active participant in the entire process. Spirituality, of course, is just a little bullet point that I added in here that's really important to this generation as well, too. Spirituality can sometimes take on a new meaning as they age or even face serious illness. I don't necessarily advise asking specifically about religious or spiritual practices, but if they offer the information, you can really learn something about their healthcare choices and preferences if it is something that they offer. And I've come across this many times, that it's something that's just openly discussed. And it's really how a patient and how a client and how someone views the afterlife really can sometimes help in framing the entire conversation. Ongoing communication is really key to working effectively with the older generation. You know, if your client doesn't really follow your recommendations, or you know they aren't returning your call, or you schedule an appointment, they missed an appointment, you know, explore whether or not there's a difficulty. Maybe there's a communication difficulty, something has developed. You really want to pay close attention to communication, because it really increases the odds of the greater opportunity for them to speak with you and satisfactions on both sides. Interactions between yourself and this crowd are really influenced by the expectations and the stereotypes that each of you bring to the table. Sometimes you want to make sure that you aren't very condescending. You want to make sure that you do not come across as being less patient when interacting. It's definitely a lot of things to keep in mind when you're working with the crowd. Not every older client is the same. You may see a frail 60-year-old, and then you would see the relatively healthy 80-year-old. Your clients are probably very also culturally diverse, with varying socioeconomic and even educational backgrounds. They can be quite active, while others may be even sedentary. The techniques that I kind of discussed here really kind of are going to encourage you to view all of the older generation as individuals who have a wide range of healthcare needs and questions in general. Make sure that you're building things based on emotion and then closing with reasoning. Like I mentioned last week, a lot of it can be emotional based, and then to wrap with reasoning is the way to really truly close out the sale. One thing that I wanted to end with here, and a final point, is really you want to make sure that you're patient. A lot of the over 65 crowd, they spend more time when it comes to buying decisions, and you're going to find that the more expensive the sales product may be, the more time it's going to take. Always avoid urgency marketing tactics such as, buy today, buy before it's too late. It's really going to be lost on this baby boomer generation. Instead, you always want to be patient with the sales process. You want to give them time to ask the questions that's needed, and then time to formulate a decision. This, of course, on their end is going to be appreciated, and you are going to be surprised really how true that the main saying goes, that slow and steady wins the race. It's going to be so true when it comes down to the fact that when they are giving the time to formulate that decision, it's going to make or break the difference. Fostering trust really demonstrates your overall knowledge and how you can help them achieve their goals and solve their specific challenges, whether that be a medical challenge or something of another nature. Instead of a sales pitch, you really want to get to know their life story and acknowledge their accomplishments. You want to really position yourself, and remember this, is to position yourself as a committed member of a team that's ready when they need you. And since of course, two baby boomers are alike, you're going to customize the solution for them. Once you've earned their trust, this generation can also be an amazing referral source, and they're more likely to recommend you to their friends and families if you can break through that initial barrier. So that's really all that I had for today in regards to going and speaking with the 65 demographic. Again, if you have some questions or you have some areas that maybe I went by too quick or some things that you didn't understand, you can feel free to email the box here at training@ahcpsales.com. You can call the agency services at 877-228-8773. I am available for questions at any time. A member of our training team is constantly monitoring this box. We will constantly be able to answer your questions. And if needs be, you can always ask for me directly, and I would even be willing to talk with you one-on-one if it's something that you want to learn more information about. Something to close today's Monday motivation with, something on aging here that I really thought, in my opinion, really encapsulates today's lesson about the 65 plus generation, and it hopefully kind of leaves you with a smile to end the day on as well, is that I have four very, very well-known personalities here with really four distinct views on life and aging in general, and really how to look at growing old. We have a quote by Meryl Streep that said, you have to embrace getting older. Life is precious, and when you've lost a lot of people, you realize each day is a gift. Helen Mirren, I try to sleep as much as possible. It's very important, and as you get older, even more so. So completely different points of view there on aging. George Bernard Shaw, you don't stop laughing when you grow old. You grow old when you stop laughing. And to end with Albert Einstein's quote, do not grow old no matter how long you live. Never cease to stand like curious children before the great mystery into which we are born. So that's it for today, everybody. Have a super, super, super awesome, happy Monday and a wonderful week ahead. And remember, as I've mentioned before, a couple weeks back, always let the prior week go. This week's a fresh week. It starts new. It's a clear start. And you have a really personally, a fresh, clear start from all the worry from the past. So cheers, everybody. See you next week and take care.